welcome to the Deep Dive by 5W Media.
Great to be here.
Today we're tackling a topic that I know is on a lot of our minds. How to build serious self-discipline, like extreme discipline.
Yeah, it's something people ask about all the time.
Exactly. So we've pulled together quite a bit of research exploring, well, everything from what makes some people mentally tougher than others to the nitty-gritty of how our brains actually form habits and even how our surroundings play this, like, surprisingly big role.
It's fascinating stuff, really.
Our mission today is basically to cut through the noise, you know, and give you the key insights and practical takeaways you can actually use.
Things you can apply to really strengthen your ability to stick with your goals.
And develop that extreme discipline we often admire. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good. What's fascinating right off the bat is that when we talk about extreme discipline, it's not just about being, like, rigid or forcing yourself.
Right.
Our sources suggest it's rooted in something called mental toughness.
Mental toughness.
Now, this isn't about being some kind of superhero. It's more like a specific set of inner resources that helps you handle stress, pressure, even new opportunities more effectively.
So it's learnable, like a skill.
Yeah, think of it like a skill you can hone rather than just, a fixed personality trait you either have or don't.
That makes sense. So it's not about being born with an iron will or anything.
Not necessarily, no.
And this mental toughness seems to have a few key parts to it. The research highlights things like really believing in yourself.
Self-belief, yeah.
True. Getting motivated even when things get hard.
Yeah.
And just plain old persistence, like not giving up when you hit a wall.
And how you bounce back from setbacks. That's big.
Okay, here's where it gets interesting. They've broken this down into 4 main areas: control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. The 4 C's, they call it.
Exactly. And control here means feeling like you have a handle on your life and, importantly, your emotions.
Okay, managing reactions.
Right. Commitment is about being really focused on your goals, driven to achieve them.
Got it.
Challenge involves seeing difficulties not as, like, threats, but more as chances to learn and grow, being okay with taking risks.
So a different mindset towards obstacles.
Absolutely. And confidence is having that solid belief in your own abilities and trusting your gut sometimes. So it's a much more well-rounded picture than just being tough in the old-fashioned sense.
Right. It sounds like someone who's mentally tough has this underlying can-do attitude, is willing to put in the effort, and, well, generally tends to perform better.
That's what the research suggests.
Plus, they don't get thrown off course as easily by failures, and it even ties into wanting to improve themselves, that kind of constant drive for growth.
Yeah, that aspiration piece.
So if someone's struggling with procrastination, maybe, which might indicate a lack of commitment, a first step based on this could be setting smaller, more easily achievable goals, just to build that momentum.
Precisely. Build that sense of forward motion. And, if we connect this to some broader ideas in psychology, these 4 C's actually show some interesting links to the well-known Big 5 personality traits.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, for instance, seeing a challenge as an opportunity, that relates pretty strongly to being open to new experiences. Openness.
Makes sense.
Commitment aligns really well with being conscientious, organized, goal-oriented.
You're right, conscientious stuff.
Confidence often goes hand in hand with being more extroverted.
Okay.
And that feeling of control, especially emotional stability, that links to being lower in neuroticism. Understanding these connections can help you tap into your existing strengths.
What do you mean?
Well, if you know you're naturally curious, high in openness, you might find it easier to frame obstacles as interesting puzzles to solve, leveraging that trait.
That's a great way to think about it, leveraging what you already have. Okay, now, how do we take this understanding of mental toughness and actually build more of that discipline we're after?
Yeah, the how.
Another big piece of the puzzle seems to come from how our brains form habits. Because let's face it, you can't rely on willpower alone all the time, can you?
You're spot on. Motivation is great, but it's famously unreliable. Consistency, fueled by habits, is what gets us to those long-term goals.
But habits can cut both ways, right?
Oh, absolutely. They can work for us or against us, often operating below our conscious awareness and derailing even our best intentions. Studies suggest that a huge chunk, maybe around 45% of our daily behavior, is habitual.
Wow, nearly half.
Yeah, happening almost automatically in familiar settings. Think about your morning routine. You probably do loads of things on autopilot.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you realize how much of our day is just running on these automatic programs. So how does our brain handle this difference between like conscious actions and these habits?
Our brain actually uses different systems for this. When we're learning something new or making a conscious decision, the prefrontal cortex, that front part of our brain involved in planning, complex thought, decision-making, is very active.
The thinking part.
Kind of like the CEO making conscious choices. But when we repeat actions over and over in the same context, the control gradually shifts to a different area called the basal ganglia.
Basal ganglia. Okay.
Yeah, which is more involved in forming habits and automatic behaviors. It's like the autopilot kicking in once a routine is established.
Okay, so the goal then is to consciously use that CEO part, the prefrontal cortex, to set up good habits.
Exactly.
So they eventually get handed over to the autopilot, the basal ganglia,
Yeah.
and become easier to maintain.
That's the idea.
The research talks a lot about cues. How do those fit in?
Right. Cues are critical. Habits are often triggered by specific cues.
Right.
These can be times of day, locations, emotions, even the action that came just before.
Like the trigger.
Precisely. So to build new habits effectively, being deliberate about these cues is key. Instead of just saying, I want to exercise more, which is kind of vague.
Yeah, never works for me.
It's much more effective to tie it to a specific cue, like right after I finish my lunch break. That's a time-based cue. I will do 10 minutes of stretching. Or, for someone wanting to read more, a cue could be placing a book on their bedside table. That's a location cue. Or reading immediately after brushing their teeth at night. That links it to a preceding action. These event-based cues tend to be pretty reliable.
That makes so much sense, making it a specific if-then or when-then scenario. What about those not-so-great habits we want to ditch?
The strategy there often involves increasing friction. Basically, make it harder to do the unwanted behavior.
Add obstacles.
Exactly. If you tend to mindlessly scroll social media before bed, a simple way to add friction is to charge your phone in another room overnight.
Yeah, makes it less convenient.
It's like putting the cookie jar on a high shelf instead of right in front of you.
Yeah.
And conversely, for habits you want to build, you reduce the barriers. Lay out your workout clothes the night before, have healthy snacks ready to grab, make the good choice the easy choice.
And I found this idea of a piggybacking or habit stacking really clever, attaching a new habit to something you already do without thinking.
Oh yeah, it's a very effective technique. By linking a new behavior to an existing routine, you significantly increase the chances of remembering and actually doing it.
Like the example of flossing just one tooth after brushing.
Exactly. It sounds tiny, almost trivial, but it leverages an already established habit, brushing your teeth, and it can grow from there. You start with one, then maybe two.
Okay, so internal factors like mental toughness and habits are huge. But it's not all about our internal state, is it? Our surroundings seem to have a surprisingly strong influence on our self-discipline.
Absolutely. Our environment can significantly impact our ability to stay disciplined, sometimes even more than sheer willpower, which is kind of counterintuitive.
Well, more than willpower.
In some situations, yeah. Think about it. A cluttered or chaotic environment can make it much harder to focus and stick to our plans, while an organized and positive one can really support our efforts.
The broken windows theory was a really striking example of this in the research.
Yeah, that's a classic. The idea that visible signs of disorder in a community, broken windows, graffiti, whatever, can actually encourage more disorder and even more serious issues. It shows how cues in our environment shape behavior.
And the Cornell study on office temperature. I mean, who knew that something as simple as the thermostat could have such a big impact on productivity? It seems so small.
It really highlights how these seemingly minor environmental factors can have a considerable effect on our focus and discipline. And it's not just the physical environment. Our social environment is just as crucial, maybe even more so.
You mean the people around us?
Exactly. There's that saying attributed to Jim Rohn that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
I've heard that.
And there's definitely truth to how peer influence can shape our habits and behaviors for better or worse.
And the Rosato effect, that was about a whole town, right? Showing how a supportive community can have incredibly positive effects on overall well-being.
Yeah, an amazing case study. It suggests that strong social support, that sense of community, likely plays a role in our ability to maintain discipline and healthy habits too.
So how do we apply this? Create a discipline-friendly environment.
Well, on a practical level, it involves things like, yes, decluttering your workspace to minimize distractions. That's a start.
Okay, tidy desk.
But also limiting those digital notifications that constantly pull our attention, turning off alerts, and consciously surrounding yourself with people who have positive habits, people who support your goals rather than undermine them.
Choosing your circle wisely.
Definitely. And setting clear boundaries, whether it's for work hours, screen time, or social commitments, that also helps protect your focus and your discipline. It's about actively designing your environment to support your intentions.
This brings us to that ever-elusive concept of willpower itself. We often talk about it like a tank that can run empty.
Yeah.
What does the research actually say about whether willpower is a limited resource?
The willpower debate. There's definitely been, well, a debate on this. Early research, like Roy Baumeister's influential work, strongly suggested that willpower is like a muscle that can get fatigued with use. Ego depletion, they called it.
Right. I remember hearing about that, like resisting cookies makes it harder to focus later.
Kind of, yeah. However, more recent studies, like large meta-analyses which combine results from many studies conducted by researchers like Martin Hager, indicate that this depletion effect might actually be smaller or more nuanced than initially thought.
So maybe not quite like a muscle running out of fuel.
It might be more complicated. But then you have field-based studies, like Moravin's work, looking at things like stress and alcohol intake in daily life, which do offer some support for the idea that our capacity for self-control can be temporarily reduced when we're under significant strain.
Okay, so it's not entirely clear-cut. The jury's maybe still out a bit.
A little bit, yeah. It's an active area of research. But the good news seems to be that even if willpower can get temporarily depleted, it's also something we can potentially strengthen over time. Like exercising a muscle, maybe the analogy isn't totally wrong.
Wait, you can actually train willpower. How?
That's a really promising area. Research, including another meta-analysis by Fries and colleagues, has shown that regularly practicing small acts of self-control can lead to improvements in overall willpower, or at least in self-control performance on unrelated tasks.
What kind of small acts?
Even simple exercises like consistently squeezing a hand grip for a certain amount of time each day.
Seriously, a hand grip?
Yeah, or making a conscious effort to use your non-dominant hand for everyday tasks like brushing your teeth or opening doors. These small, consistent efforts seem to have a positive effect over time.
Why would that work?
The thinking is it might work by strengthening our self-belief in our ability to exert control, or perhaps by actually making those self-control muscles, neurologically speaking, a bit more efficient.
Interesting. And I was also really interested in the research around rituals. These seemingly small, specific routines we create around certain activities and how they can somehow boost our self-control.
Yeah, Schroeder's research on eating rituals is a great example. Things like unwrapping a chocolate bar in a specific way or tapping your glass before drinking. It suggests that performing these deliberate sequences of actions can actually reinforce our self-perception as someone who is in control.
Like sending a signal to yourself, I'm being intentional here.
Exactly. It's almost like it creates a little bit of psychological distance and enhances the feeling of agency.
What about the marshmallow test? That always comes up.
The classic. It's often brought up in discussions of self-control, of course. But it's important to note that later research, longitudinal studies following those kids, has shown that factors like a child's intelligence, and especially their socioeconomic background, also play a huge role in those long-term outcomes.
So it's not just about pure willpower, even from a young age.
Definitely not. It's much more complex than just seeing who can resist a treat the longest. And another fascinating finding is that our own beliefs about willpower can actually influence how effective it is.
How so?
Savani and Job's study really highlighted this mindset effect. If you believe willpower is a strictly limited resource that gets easily depleted, you tend to perform worse on self-control tasks after an initial effort compared to people who believe willpower is more abundant or even self-generating.
Wow, so your mindset about it actually changes how it works for you.
It seems to, yeah. Which all circles back nicely to those practical strategies for building discipline. We saw in that personal account, we looked at a real emphasis on building positive habits based on willpower, not just relying on that fickle friend, motivation.
Right, motivation fades.
And the key was starting with incredibly small, almost ridiculously easy requirements for new habits, like the example you mentioned, just doing one push-up a day.
Start so small you can't possibly fail.
Exactly. The goal is to guarantee early success and build that all-important momentum and consistency. Failure early on can derail you.
That makes a lot of sense. The account also highlighted the value of actively seeking out knowledge. like through reading nonfiction, and then actually applying those insights to personal growth. Not just reading, but doing.
Yes, translating knowledge into action. And the discussion around dopamine was really insightful too, understanding that it's often more about that feeling of wanting, that drive and motivation, rather than just the experience of pleasure itself.
The anticipation almost.
Right. And how these easily accessible super stimuli in our modern environment, junk food, endless scrolling, etc., can sometimes hijack our dopamine system, making it harder to pursue long-term meaningful goals.
That connects to the idea of flow activities, doesn't it?
It does. Those deeply engaging tasks where your skill level perfectly matches the challenge. You get absorbed, lose track of time, that state of flow. It's described as highly enjoyable, but it's a different kind of enjoyment than passive pleasure. It's often growth-producing enjoyment. You're stretching your abilities, learning, achieving something. It builds self-esteem and competence in a way that just consuming pleasure doesn't.
And we absolutely cannot overlook the fundamental role of sleep. Seriously, this came up again and again.
Foundational. A consistent and healthy sleep schedule impacts pretty much everything. Our cognitive function, our emotional regulation, our overall energy levels, and yes, even our motivation and ability to exert self-control.
The benefits of a consistent wake-up time, even on weekends, and the potential downsides of consistently staying up late, messing with your rhythm, were definitely underscored.
Massively important. Poor sleep just makes everything harder, including discipline.
And finally, the simple act of tracking those positive behaviors, maybe using a journal like a bullet journal with, say, color coding or something, that can provide that tangible reinforcement.
Yeah, seeing your progress visually can be really motivating and helps solidify those disciplined actions over time. It makes the commitment real.
So, for you listening, what does this all mean? Where do you start?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that building that extreme discipline isn't some magic trick or, a trait only some people are born with.
Right. It's not mystical.
No, it's really a combination of understanding your own mindset around mental toughness, intentionally leveraging the power of habits through carefully chosen cues, and reducing friction for good behaviors.
Creating an environment that actively supports your goals, understanding the nuances of willpower and that you might be able to strengthen it, and consistently implementing these small, practical strategies.
Exactly. So maybe consider right now just one tiny action you can take based on what we've discussed. It could be setting a ridiculously small goal for a new habit you want to build starting tomorrow.
Like the one push-up.
Or think about one small way you can tweak your environment tonight. Maybe moving your phone charger to make a desired behavior just a little bit easier or an undesired one a bit harder.
And maybe try to cultivate that mindset of seeing challenges not as roadblocks, but as opportunities for growth, like we talked about with mental toughness.
Remember, building discipline is a continuous process. It's a journey of small, consistent steps, incremental progress. Understanding these underlying principles gives you the knowledge and, hopefully, the tools to take control and make steady progress toward whatever goals matter to you.
Absolutely. It's empowering stuff. If you like what you are hearing from us, please subscribe.
It really helps us out.
Also, if you could like and share this video, it helps us tremendously and means so much to us.
Spread the word.
Please also leave a comment. We genuinely want to know what you think, and we value any ideas you might have for future deep dives.
Yeah, let us know what's on your mind.
Thanks for tuning in.